One question I get a lot from beginners to the IFR guitar method is how we learn to visualize larger intervals on the fretboard. As you know, in IFR, we learn to project tonality directly on the fretboard. So we're not working from memorized scale drawings. We want to be able to visualize and express any harmonic concept we have anywhere on the fretboard. And so the way we do that is to learn to relate our musical ideas to a visual map of the octave that we call the tonal map, and then we learn to project this tonal map anywhere on the fretboard. And so naturally, the place where we begin developing that ability is with the smallest interval we have, and that's the half step. So our first exercise on the guitar would be to just learn to move around our musical system by half steps on the fretboard of the guitar. On any individual string, it's very straightforward. It's just the frets on that string. And so then we just need to learn how to connect that to the next string so that we can keep going. After that, we look at the whole step. So now on any individual string, we're talking about moving up by 2 frets. And then we just have to learn what that whole step looks like as we cross from one string to the next. Now, once we have both half steps and whole steps, we can build the tonal map, because our kind of the backbone of the IFR tonal map is the major scale. Those are not the only notes that we can play, but we practice building the tonal map by starting out playing the notes of the major scale. So we have a whole step from 1 to 2, a whole step from 2 to 3, a half step from 3 to 4, and so on. And so we practice that 1, 2, now I need a whole step to 3, I gotta think about that whole step mobility jump. The half step to 4 is just a fret. Maybe here from 4 to 5, I'll do another whole step mobility jump to get down there, and then 6, and then 7. And this is the moment that the beginner will often think ahead and ask the question, well, how will I know in the future how to execute a much larger interval? Like, let's say I'm on note 1 and I want to go all the way up to note 6. Am I going to have to mentally walk through 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5 to figure out where my 6 is? Or am I just going to know from note 1 exactly how to go to that note 6? And the answer is yes and yes. And that's what I'm going to walk you through in this video. So let's start with the first interval that we find in the major scale, which is the whole step from note 1 up to note 2. Now, from your IFR mobility practice, I trust that you can move all around the fretboard of the guitar by whole steps, but what we need to practice is doing that in a tonal context. In other words, we need to mentally rehearse that we're going from note 1 to note 2 when we do that. And on the guitar, I already have 2 ways I can do that. If this is my note 1 here, one way that I could move up a whole step to note 2 would be to move up 2 frets on the same string. But I have another option. I could play this 1 with my pinky, and now I could do the whole step mobility jump to note 2 on the next string. Now this is something we already have to pause a minute and learn and get it into kind of our permanent memory, that 1 to 2 can look like this, or it can look like this. Maybe I would do it with these fingers. That's my 1 and 2. So from 1, now there should no longer be any doubt at all in your mind about how you can instantly move to a note 2. So let's move on. From note 2 to note 3, we have another whole step. So if I do this all on the same string, I just move up 2 frets from 1 to 2, and then another 2 frets from 2 to 3. But now we've got to connect the endpoints. We've got to learn that lesson and put that into our permanent memory. From 1 to 3 looks like this. And now I'm stretching my hand. I'm using just the 4 fingers of my left hand to cover 5 frets on the fretboard. From 1 to 3, I've got my 1, sharp 1, 2, sharp 2, 3. And that's what 1 to 3 looks like. And I can still see the 2 in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 1, 3. Now, can I apply that knowledge backwards? Can I go somewhere else on the fretboard, like here, and consider that my 3? And can I picture 3, 2, 1? And that puts 1 here. 1, 3, 3, 1. This is one of the ways that I can visualize the interval from 1 to 3. It's on the same string, separated by these 5 frets. Okay, the other way I could do it though, is I could, from here, if this is my 1, I could move up the same string to a 2, but then I could do my mobility jump and put 3 on the next string. And again, I've got to connect the endpoints. 1, 2, 3. From 1 to 3, how do I mentally remember that? How do I get that in my permanent memory of what that movement from 1 to 3 looks like? Now, in these normal strings on the guitar, it looks like a diagonal line, like the movement of the bishop in chess, right? From 1 to 3, straight line, diagonal that way, going up one string and down one fret. Again, can I access this information in reverse? If I'm up here, and you tell me this is a 3 and I've got to come down to a 1, can I trust in that information? Can I follow the diagonal line backwards and from my 3 picture the 1 right there? And then can I fill in the story? Can I do my 1, 2, 3 and tie the whole story together? Okay, there was another way that I could have moved up to that note 3 on the next string. And it was after my 1 here, instead of moving up on the same string for my 2, I could have done the mobility jump immediately right off the bat. 1 to 2, 1, 2, and now I move up 2 more frets to my 3. And now connecting the endpoints, we get to the exact same result we had before, right? It's that diagonal line still. I got there through a different route. Instead of going 1, 2, 3, I went 1, 2, 3. But my 1 to 3, the result, I'm playing the same notes in the same places. It's that diagonal line going that way. And that's what it looks like to go from 1 to 3. So it's an extension of this same process that we've already learned that 1 to 2 can look like that, or it can look like this. 1 to 3 can look like this, or it can look like this. Let's move on. Let's think about the interval from 1 up to 4. That's an interesting one. From 1 to 4, if I do it all in the same string, I get 1, whole step to 2, whole step to 3, final half step to 4. Now I'm really stretching my hand. I probably wouldn't even do it that way. Probably what I would do if I want to stay on the same string is I would play 1 with my index, and then I would shift up a position, putting my index finger now over the note 2, because now mentally it's very easy for me to picture 2, whole step to 3, half step to 4. And so that movement becomes just playing 1 with my index and then putting the index over 2 and knowing that I can play with my pinky. That's going to give me the 4. But this is something you got to think through. You got to explore this yourself. 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2. If I stretch for the 3, I could slide up for the 4, or for my 1, I could change position to the 2, then play the 3 with my ring, then the 4 with my pinky. So now let's look at my options for placing note 4 on the next string. If this is my 1, I guess my first choice could be to do the mobility jump right off the bat and move up a whole step from 1 to 2 that way. And then it's just another whole step up to 3, that's 2 frets. And now just a half step up to 4, it's just 1 fret. And now I've got to connect the endpoints. Remember, I started here on 1, 2, 3, 4. Now isn't that interesting? Those are at the same fret. So from 1 to 4 in the normal strings on my guitar, that interval is always the equivalent of just jumping up to the next string and staying at the same fret. That's a really important piece of data to put in my permanent memory, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 4. Okay, what if starting from 1, what if I did the whole step up this way, going from 1 to 2, 2 frets up on the same string, then I do the whole step mobility jump from 2 to 3, and then finally I move up 1 more half step. I'm playing with a different finger now, I'm in a different position, and I see that same relationship. They're at the same fret from 1 to 4, hopping up 1 string at the same fret. I could actually delay that mobility jump one more moment there. If I were to go to play 1 like this, and then move up 2 frets on the same string to 2, move up 2 more frets on the same string to play 3, and now do the half step mobility jump, which requires me to change position to go from 3 to 4, 3, 4. Now if I can remember where I started, that it all started here, now I'm playing them both with my index finger, but I get the same result, right? So it's just a million ways of confirming the same thing, that 1 and 4 are going to be at the same fret, just moving up 1 string. And so I've got those 2 ways that I can visualize 1 and 4. I can see them both on the same string, or I can simply mentally remember, learn that permanently, that if this is a 1, 4 is always at the same fret on the next string. Now when we move up to note 5, it gets a lot more interesting for a couple of reasons. One is I'm no longer really all that interested in this scenario where I'm going to locate the note 5 on the same string as my note 1 because it's getting to be quite far away. I'm still really interested in the other scenario of locating that note 5 on the next string. But also, we've already clarified a bunch of other notes, and this is an example of the kind of exponential benefit that you start to accrue by studying it in this way, is that all of these intervals that you learn, they serve you as building blocks to visualize other intervals. So for example, we could just build it the slow way using the major scale. From this 1, I can move up 2 frets to 2, another 2 frets to 3. I could do my half-step mobility jump up here to 4, 2 frets higher will take me to 5, and I get this form, like that rock power chord, right? The root and fifth. But we already said, we spent a lot of time focusing on the fact that from 1 to 4, it's a very, very simple movement, right? It's at the same fret. Just hop up the next string and you're already from your 1 to your 4. Well, if you know that from 1 here, my 4's got to be there. If I can just picture 2 frets above that, that's what gives me my 1, 5. And so I don't have to picture all the steps along the way if I can remember some of the milestones. Now, the other interesting thing about note 5 is that as it begins to slip out of our useful range here on the same string where I have my 1, it starts to come into our usable range down here on the next string. So for example, if I start with my pinky on note 1, and I do the whole step mobility jump up to note 2, and now I just move up 2 frets on the same string to note 3, which we could have gone right there knowing that that movement from 1 to 3 is just that diagonal line. From 3, it's a half step up to 4, but you already know that you could also just visualize it that way because you know that 1 and 4 are at the same fret. From 4 now, it's a whole step mobility jump to 5 on this string. And so that is something else that we have to learn. Now we have to learn that 1 and 5 can look like this on the fretboard. So now we have 2 ways to picture 1, 5. I've got my classic rock power chord, and I've got my, whatever you want to call this, 2 strings up, 3 frets down. That's what 1 to 5 can look like. It might help you to picture this little shortcut movement here from 1 to 4 at the same fret, and then the whole step mobility jump from 4 to 5. But this is another little snapshot that you've got to take and put in your permanent long-term memory, that's one of the ways that 1 to 5 can look. And from 5, if I move up 2 more frets, I get my 6 that our beginning student was asking about. If I'm on note 1 at the bottom and I want to go to note 6, how will I know where that is? Well, as you go through this process every day, not necessarily methodically the way we're doing it, it doesn't have to be such a formal, rigid exercise. You could just be jamming with these notes, and as long as you're conscious of the notes you're playing, you play over here a little bit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can play here in the middle, you can play here, right? And as we're jamming over jam tracks and playing with these sounds, we are learning these lessons. These shapes are getting burned into our mind, and we're picturing all these little constellations and all these relationships. And so having all of these resources then locked into your long-term memory is what enables you to know that that's just what 1 to 6 looks like. But you have to be able to defend that decision. You have to be able to show all the chain of logic that got you there. Well, this must be 1 to 6 because a whole step mobility jump below that takes me down to 5. And look, I can see my rock power chord here from 1 to 5. I know that's how it is. And I can confirm it because if I go down a whole step more, I get my 1 and 4, which I know are at the same fret. And so everything you learn confirms everything else. The net result is simply a knowledge that the interval from 1 to 6 looks like this at any fret in the normal strings on your guitar. But what we want is all the knowledge. We want to understand the complete landscape and all those little steps across it. So I hope that this demonstration helps to fill in the missing pieces a little bit and gives you a much clearer idea about how you're going to develop this ability. I would just encourage you to take all the time in the world with it, especially learning to see these very basic building blocks, the smallest intervals in the major scale, because it's the small building blocks that combine together to make those larger intervals that you also want to be able to visualize. So it's truly one of those cases in life where the slow road is the fast road. By taking a lot of time and getting really good at visualizing all these simple movements and tonal shapes, That's what's going to enable you to combine all this stuff effortlessly in the future, to improvise all across the entire fretboard in any key, over any chord, across changing chords and everything else. It's not about developing an inventory of knowledge as much as it's about developing a personal ability. It's really your personal growth and your ability to visualize tonality directly on the fretboard. And there are a lot of things that we notice along the way, but there's also a core skill that we're developing and getting much faster at. And so I would just encourage you to take all the time in the world and really jam with the 7 worlds, jam with the major scale and all kinds of simple configurations on your fretboard, and give your brain time to assimilate all this information and learn to picture all these different tonal numbers and all the different ways they can be configured on your fretboard.